take a look now at the results from this weekend's action in the Premier League. And it started with a surprise, with Brighton beating Manchester United by 2-1, although it's become kind of the norm over previous seasons. Crystal Palace beaten 2-0 at home by West Ham. Fulham with that 2-1 win at home against Leicester. Manchester City, it was an early-ish scare with Ipswich going 1-0 up in that game, but they came back to win it by 4-1. Southampton beaten 1-0 at home by Nottingham Forest. A big win for Tottenham and another heavy defeat for Everton. 4-0 the final scoreline at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Arsenal with that 2-0 victory against Aston Villa. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Bournemouth with a 1-1 draw against Newcastle. It was a 1-1 draw, but all kinds of controversy at the end of that game with a potential red card, with a disallowed goal, all things to talk about. That game between Wolves and Chelsea ended 6-2 to Chelsea. Wolves had an XG of 1.8. Chelsea had an XG of 1.4, and they scored 8 goals between them. And then to round up that Sunday, Liverpool with a 2-0 victory at Anfield against Brentford in what was Arne Slot's first game in front of the home crowd, rather. Let's take a look at the table then. Manchester City are top. That's where they're going to expect to be and want to be come the end of the season, but still with a 100% record. Brighton, Arsenal and Liverpool. At the other end of the table, there are a handful of teams who are yet to get off the mark, although we are only 2 games into the season. But they include Everton, and that goal difference is -7 already after just 2 games. Wolves with a -6 goal difference. Ipswich also on 0 points, as are Crystal Palace and Southampton. 4-1 then for Manchester City against Ipswich. Ipswich started well, gave themselves just a little bit of hope, but there is really such a thing as scoring too early in a game. It's not a cliche for no reason. Manchester City absolutely dominant after that, and in particular Erling Haaland. And it's easy to say, here they go again then, this is what City does, this is what Haaland does. But this is a guy who's not been away for the Euros or the Olympics. He's had a quiet summer in terms of what he's been asked to do competitively, but he's just raring to go. He said last week, this is the first time in a long time I've started a season absolutely pain-free. Yeah. And that is a frightening thought for the rest of the league.
It is. I saw something the other day as well, Kels, on social media about how he prepares and what he's doing now. And it's almost like...
Is this about him drinking milk?
Ronaldo-esque and eating carrots and all the stuff he does.
He's like Rudolph at Christmas.
He's like...
This milk and carrots.
It's the preparation now that he's putting into his game. And obviously with the break he's had this summer with Norway not qualifying for things, and, you know, he's able to relax and do... He's a dangerous element, man, to every single team if he's in this kind of mode. And I know Alvarez is gone, but if he stays fit... you can see another 40, 50 goals.
You know, you're saying he's had time to just relax, and he'll certainly been able to switch his mind off. But he said at the start of the season, he's been itching to go for the whole of the close season. He's like, I just couldn't wait to get back and play. He's like, he started like those Matchbox cars that you draw back and then they go. That's what he's been ready to go.
He has been. I mean, he started off this season incredibly well. He looks hungry, he looks fired up. He looks in great nick. I know he always looks in good shape, but for whatever reason, his sharpness in his finishing, because maybe last season at times, because he set such high standards in his first season, there were chances he'd miss or the runs he'd make and you'd go, that's not quite like him. It's like he's put all that to bed, or he's listened to all the noise and he's come back. And even the hat-trick, the last one, he just knows where the goal is, just turns, bang, it's a goal. Yeah. It's a scary thought for the Premier League, I think, for this season, because we've seen him be incredible that first season. I think he can go better than that. I think, because even if he got 27 last season, and people would say that by his standards that he set, he wasn't, maybe his all-round game wasn't what we saw in the first season. The way he's come back this season, with De Bruyne, looks like he's fit, bringing Gundogan back as well. You start adding these pieces in and around it, Jeremy Doku will get better this season as well. I think he can go better than that. I really do.
And even in terms of like the goals he scores, it's the fact that they come in hat-tricks as well. 9.7 games per hat-trick. He's just short of a hat-trick every 10 games. I mean, that is incredible.
It is. He is playing for arguably one of the best team the Premier League has ever constructed. But at the same time, you can't take away from the fact that he is
Aguero
a phenomenal
didn't do that as well.
Exactly. You know, but like we know that Aguero is a great goal scorer, but this guy is a different animal in respects of goal scoring and wanting to score goals. You know, and it's very difficult to stop. It's very difficult to stop him. His link-up play is getting better. He stretches teams. You know what I mean? If you're too if you're not putting pressure on the midfielder and your line's high, he's going over the top. The ball's come in the box. He finds space in the box. There's nowhere where you can stop him. And then you've got the quality that he's got coming towards him from De Bruyne and from Savino, who looks really Mahrez-like. You know what I mean? And like you mentioned, Gundogan coming back. He's got all the elements around him that if he's just focusing on wanting to score, like you mentioned at the start, I just couldn't wait to go. It's going to be near impossible to stop him.
He's that hungry, and I think we saw it last season, because he scored 4, and then he got taken off by Pep, and he was fuming.
Yeah, I'm fuming as well, because I've said he's going to be one of the first people to score 6 in a game. And when he got to 4 that time, and Pep's taking him off, I said, just leave him on.
for you, if for nothing else.
Because I want to see him score 6 in a game.
Somebody think of Wrighty and all this.
He'll score 6 in a game if he stays on, especially in this mood, he's in this form. You know?
But it's interesting, because we were talking just before we came on about the fact that there's a lot of teams, most of them feel like they're just getting up to speed. The people haven't really hit the ground running this season. They're playing their way in, barring Manchester City, who look like they are absolutely ready to go. And it's not just Haaland. De Bruyne has had a quietish time and was out injured for a lot of last season. So, he's maybe not as worn out as some of the other players who've had those long seasons followed by tournaments. And then there's the return, as we've mentioned, of Gundogan, who's coming back in to play a part. They feel refreshed and ready to go.
Yeah, I think some of that is around the players that didn't have major tournaments, but also the core of the team hasn't changed a lot. They brought in Savino, who looks brilliant. Obviously, Oscar Bob had that injury, which is unfortunate, but they haven't had a huge turnover of players this summer. I think that helps where the foundation is really strong. De Bruyne went home fairly early in the Euros, which I think has given him more time to rest. So they just keep adding more and more elements, and the core of the team stay together. Pep is still there as well, and building that legacy, building what he wants to achieve. So I do think that continuation of that amazing run that they always finish season with, we've just seen it this season. Then you've got Haaland, who I don't think we've ever seen a striker in the Premier League with such an appetite for scoring goals and that constant hunger and desire to be there and make things happen. It's really unique. It's really special to see someone like that, because we've seen great goal scorers, but there's a certain energy to it that is unrecognisable for anyone else.
You look at this City side and the way they're playing, with Rodri still to come back yet. They've got Gundogan back in there. You could see they're the ones. The only thing they've got left to do in the Premier League is be invincible. You know what I mean? That frightens me, because you look at them and you think to yourself, in the mode that they're in, if they're carrying it, they're going to be very difficult to beat. You could see them probably doing an invincible thing.
It was always going to be difficult for... we'll start talking about that more seriously. Maybe after Christmas we'll look...
It's only
we'll
two
revisit
games.
that one. We'll revisit that one. But already, I mean, every season you start pretty much with City saying they could do it this season, and this time around they just look so focused. So it was always going to be difficult for Ipswich. And you were talking last week about the fact that this run of games that are coming up now might look easier, but they're just going to be difficult in a different way. So they've got Liverpool and Manchester City out the way, and you think they might think they can breathe now, but not necessarily.
Yeah, it's been tough when the fixtures are released and you look at the first two, you go, oof, it's almost after the first two games, but then it's almost like a catch-22. Do you start this way, where you've got no points on the board after 2 games, or would you rather get a few points on the board with these 2 games to come? But I think in both games, they've shown signs that they can compete at Premier League level. I thought they were brilliant first half against Liverpool, although Liverpool then second half upped it, and then obviously the rest is history. You take the lead against Manchester City, you plan some good stuff, and then City do what they do to you. So you look at what's coming up. Fulham at home. It's not a must-win, but you look at these games and you start to go, well, we need to take something from there. Brighton away will be difficult. But there are a run of fixtures there where I've got no doubts with Kieran and the guys that they've got down there and the signings that they've made, that they can stay in the Premier League this season.
Yeah, but it's that thing when teams come up, Flo, that they've been used to. The nature of getting promoted is that you've had a dominant season. You've been able to have a lot of the ball. You've been able to dictate play, and they've had 2 great seasons where they've been on top. And suddenly you have to go into defensive mode, and you have to go into just don't let this be a heavy defeat mode when they're coming up against, say, Liverpool and particularly Manchester City. But now they've got to go on the front foot a little bit more. So there's that thing of it being a more familiar way for them to play, but also they're coming up against teams who have been doing that in the Premier League. So it's trying to strike that balance.
And I think there are some changes where they can maybe be a little bit savvier in how they're playing. I think the way that they play, they want to play out from the back. But in the Premier League, you're not going to get as much time on the ball than you have been in the Championship. And I do think there'll be some, adaptations that they can make as a side, because they came under pressure in the Liverpool game and they managed to get away with it. One of the goals they conceded against Manchester City was because of a mistake out the back. So I do think there are ways they can adapt. I think when Calvin Phillips is fully fit, I think they need an extra body in midfield who's going to hold onto the ball better, who's going to disrupt play a little bit more, because I do think they are weakness in the midfield. And when you're playing a team like City, I think that's going to be exposed. So I think there are some small things that will bring them more. Sami Szmodek's unbelievable signing, so good, and this is his shot in the Premier League, and I think he'll do well. But they've also got, Murray Hutchinson, they've got good players going forward. I think it's playing out from the back and in the midfield that they need to tighten things up, and that'll be the foundation which sets them going.
You see that when you look at the run of fixtures, and obviously Liverpool, then City, but then you take that brilliant performance against them in the first half against Liverpool, the way they man-to-man and they were very tight and they were very organised. And then you take the fact that they scored first at Manchester City. They broke through. They had their plan and their system. They will play against teams that will be with not as much quality to punish them, like Liverpool and City. Like you say, they made a silly mistake with one of the goals, which gets Man City back in the game. But I think if they played like the first half and keep that energy going, but they can score goals against Liverpool, like they did against City, they scored a goal against City, I think they'll be able to, those teams that are coming, I think that they'll be able to deal with those teams, especially at Ipswich. I think they should look forward to all those games, because it's not going to be as difficult as the 2 games they've just had. And they will have learnt so much in respects of things that you mustn't do. All I'd be doing if I was the manager now is showing them the good stuff in the first half against Liverpool and the move that broke down City. Yeah. Those are the things I'll be showing them. Everything else I'm not bothered about.
And they've brought some good signings. They've made some good... And again, the recruitment at Ipswich is not a player that's looking for maybe one last payday or just wants to get to the Premier League. Everyone that's got a point to prove. Ben Johnson from West Ham didn't really get much of an opportunity. Jack Clarke, who I'm a big fan of, went to Spurs quite early, never really got an opportunity. He's back in the Premier League. Murray Hutchinson. Yep. He's signing good guys. Calvin Phillips has got probably a bigger point to prove than anybody after the last 2 years that he's had. So I do like the recruitment. So one thing about this squad of players, they're honest. So I think if they do go down, it won't because they've chucked the towel in. It's because they simply haven't been good enough. But I think this side with this manager, I think they've got a great shot. I really do.
They're going to be really interesting to see how that watches. And like you say, probably be sort of October time before we get an idea of how they're going to perform against teams that are not Manchester City and Liverpool. As for Arsenal, there were quite a few people saying before the game against Aston Villa that maybe, these were the 2 fixtures last season that cost Arsenal the title, and as much as any 1 or 2 fixtures can do that. But they got the win against Aston Villa this time around. It wasn't, I'm not going to say, it wasn't uncomfortable, but it wasn't dominant from Arsenal.
It was efficient, Kels.
Efficient is the word I'm looking for.
It was efficient because we can't, I thought you're always going to have possession against Villa. Villa they don't press high, they don't press mid. They kind of have this shape where you kind of get sucked in, they win the ball back and then they break on you. We can't ignore the 2 Ollie Watkins chances, which were, again, Arsenal have to look at those and say, however they came about, that was 2 goals that should have been. So, you've got away with 1. But the way they played, I thought the first half, and I thought they were right, maybe to start with Martinelli, I mentioned, because everybody's saying the pace that he's got, he's going to cause problems. It didn't quite work out. You bring on Trossard, and we saw he had a different kind of problem for them with the way his movement was, the way the time on the ball, you're able to then pick him out. He used his pace and his intelligence in a different way to Martinelli. This is why I feel that Martinelli's got a big role to play in Arsenal. But I think he's going to continue to do this, where he's going to do the horses for courses, because I thought that game was perfect for Trossard. And at the start of it, I thought, yes, this is going to be perfect for Martinelli because of the pace and the fact that they've got the high line. I thought Partey done very well in the midfield as well, and the defence is solid. Goalkeeper made some great saves, but it looks very, it looks very efficient. You know what I mean? But at the same time, there's still a couple of occasions where you could see there, so you can just learn from those. But it's just efficient, Kels. I'm not getting.
It just has to be efficient at this stage of the season, though, doesn't it? It doesn't have to be spectacular. You just need to make sure that...
Well, there's almost roles reversed, because
you get
last
the
season
result.
Arsenal were brilliant in the 2 games and got beat.
Yeah.
Whereas Villa were efficient last year, doing what they did. Certainly the one at the Emirates where Ollie Watkins at the end runs away. Arsenal did exactly what they did to them last season. So it's a big test. Aston Villa at home, Unai Emery, one of the best sides, certainly at home. But Arsenal just were lucky, because certainly I think the header from Ollie Watkins is worse than the first one.
Let's look at the Ollie Watkins, because I mean, just from again strikers' perspectives, he gets a lot of praise, Ollie Watkins, at times, and yet he does have these moments. I mean, we talked about him a couple of times last season as well. There are moments where he just feels like it's not coming naturally to him.
You know, I think, see, again, with that one, that is just, for me, I don't know what you say, is a striker that just wants to get off the mark and get the ball in there, because that header, he's got to direct it over.
Yeah.
The ball's not coming with pace. It's not coming at an awkward angle. You know what I mean? He could have easily he could have probably had a touch. You know what I mean? The way the ball came, probably didn't need to dive in it. It's easy to look at it now, Kels, because we can see it, but there's so much goal over there. All you've got to do is just head it over there. But he was just so hell-bent on just, you know, he's coming in far, he's got to hit.
But I think in that situation, I think he probably doesn't think Raya's getting up. He probably thinks, I've got the whole goal,
yeah, but this is
regardless.
Why,
and he probably thinks in that spot, OK, it doesn't matter, he's not getting back up for that.
Yeah, but then this is what Raya's shown is, you've got to, when they're down, you've got to finish them. It's because Raya and what goalkeepers do, we see them all the time, when they're over there doing that, getting up when they're on the ground, that ball's down, they get up and save that one. That's what they do. You have to put it in a position where they can't reach it. The first one, it was a case of, you know, he didn't even move his feet. It come off of his heel. That says to me more, he's not ready. He's not on his toes. He weren't ready. Maybe it's the start of the sharp enough yet.
Probably desperate to get off the mark as well, as you said.
For me, because they both look like two chances that were rushed in the way they were
And do you know what? If he'd scored one of them, we probably wouldn't be making as much of a fuss about the one that he missed. I'm thinking of Diogo Jota last week, where he misses
I've got no doubts he scores the first one. He definitely scores the second one.
Absolutely.
Because everything for that second chance, the header, is brilliant. The anticipation, because he runs past 4 Arsenal defenders who are ball watching the ball. Where's it going to go? He's there, so he does everything right. But as you said, there's that composure in front of goal, where if he scores the first one, he doesn't even think about the second one, and away he goes.
Yeah, and again, coming down to such fine margins, as Wrighty said, this wasn't Arsenal dominating Aston Villa, it's about Arsenal being efficient and doing exactly what they needed to at this early stage of the season.
Yeah, and I actually think after what happened last season against Aston Villa, playing them earlier in the season is no bad thing, because I think all sides are sort of trying to find their rhythm and get into a bit of form, and I don't think Villa are there yet. I don't think Arsenal are there yet, because they certainly, neither side really wanted to take that game by the scruff of the neck. It was there for the taking, really, but I think there was still a little bit of early season mistakes and slowness, and maybe even post-Euros fatigue from a lot of players. But the way that Villa set up, trying to block out any central play from Arsenal to play between the lines, Martinelli had that opportunity out wide again and again, but it didn't quite work, wasn't making the right decision. So it could have been a very different game if Martinelli had made the most of those opportunities or Villa had finished their chances. But I think it was a really clear sign that Arsenal are willing to just be clinical in the small moments they have, which is what it's going to take to try and go all the way yet again. Phase 3, here we go.
Third time lucky.
Third time lucky, there you go.
This is why I'm just like I'm just sizzling.
Yeah.
Simply because you know, I just want us to do this like what City do. City don't normally start well. They normally start a little bit, but they've started. They're on fire. So we need to make sure that we stay with them, so as we can get after Christmas, and then that's when the mentality side of it's going to kick in. That's when you've done it twice before. This is it. So I just want us to get there and be in the fight.
Quick word on Villa as well, because it was a really good season last time around. Phenomenal first half to the season. Can they reach those heights again? Can they reach them more consistently over the 38 games?
I think they can. I know a lot of people have spoke about their balance in Europe and the domestic, but they were in Europe, people forget, last season anyway, so they've had a taste of it. They've got the master in charge in terms of domestic football and European honours as well, and Unai Emery. But it's going to be difficult, because we saw Newcastle do it and they maybe didn't have the squad. I think what Villa have done in the transfer market's impressive. I like Onana as a midfield player. I think he's really good.
Matson's good.
Matson as well, bringing players back as well from injury. So it'll be difficult, but I think they'll have another good season. Whether they finish inside the top 4 domestically, I'm not sure about. But I think for a side like this, with the signings they've made and the players have already got there, I think anything outside the top 6 would be a really poor season for them.
And you know, we've been talking throughout the last couple of weeks about how difficult it is to judge after just 2 games. Well, after 1 game...
All right, it's been called a statement win. Is that how you describe it for Arsenal?
I think so, for a team that done a double over them last season. Second game in, Premier League, you want to get off to a good start. Yeah. You find yourself playing Villa away from home. That's a hard place to go. Arsenal, as we said, got done twice last season. Tricky side. I heard Unai Emery talk about maturity, so Villa are quite a youngish side. They missed some big chances in the game, Aston Villa, so it could have been a different story. But the story last year was Arsenal sort of played quite well in both games, lost them both. Same sort of story this time. Villa were the better side, but Arsenal this time come out on top. So statement win, I'd probably agree with.
Yeah, we heard Unai Emery saying their key moments. He was talking about those chances you mentioned. Ollie Watkins with some great opportunities to put Villa up in front. And then different game you're talking about if those go in.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Ollie obviously never slept last night. I mean, it's impossible if you're a striker to sleep after missing these 2 sitters. I mean, unbelievable chances. He knows he should have scored. The good thing about Ollie Watkins, you put yourself in a position to score goals again, and he eventually will. The first one, I thought he was laying back. You know, I think they've done brilliantly. It was on the press. You see Bailey just go quick. They're waiting to that, and when he goes, it triggers the press to go forward. You know, and when they nick it back, and Morgan Rogers was absolutely outstanding as well on the night. He wins it back there, gives it to Rogers, and Ollie knows it's going to come into him, but he seems to be leaning back, and he scuffs it off his heel. It's really not a good finish, Don.
It's a scruffy finish because if you offered Ollie Watkins this chance again, I'm pretty sure 9 times out of 10 he probably takes a touch. So Tim's right in terms of Aston Villa closing Arsenal down, putting them under pressure. Gabriel had nowhere to go, as Andy said in commentary. And the ball's a good one. It's weighted good. Maybe he thought he had to take it first time, but even if he's taken it first time, in truth, he should score. He has to score there. They're the big moments in Premier League games where you get that sort of chance. You have to take. This one's maybe playing on his mind a little bit because, in all honesty, it's a very easy finish once it comes off the crossbar. Anything, as we're looking now, towards the left-hand side of the goal, you can't miss. So the fact that he's gone pretty central, in the end, it looks like a great save from David Raya, which it is, from the goalkeeper's point of view. But Ollie Watkins, as Tim said, you'll be replaying these attempts and you're thinking, how have I not scored 2 goals? Yeah. I mean, how have I not scored?
A lot of credit goes to Raya because he doesn't let it die. You know, as soon as he goes into the net, he knows it's coming off the crossbar. He has to react. But Ollie, he cannot give him a chance to react there. I mean, he's on the floor when he heads that ball. All he can do is use his span. He needs to just direct it into the corner. He doesn't even have to move his head. He has to align his body straight so he can just head it there. It's an easier finish off your head as it is off your foot, Don. Yeah. I mean, it's a lot harder to control it off your foot. With your head, you just got to head it where you're looking. It's a really, really poor finish. And it cost them at the end of the day because Arsenal made the changes. I was crying out watching the game. If I was Mikel Arteta, I would say, come on, bring on Trossard. You need him. This guy affects football matches. Martinelli, it wasn't his day. He was staying too wide. Needs to come. For me, Trossard plays that position on the left-hand side a lot better, comes into them pockets, frees up a lot of Arsenal players, gives the midfield a lot more options, runs in behind at the right time, narrows up from these left-sided perch. It was crying out for him to come onto the pitch, and when he eventually did, he changed the game.
Virtually with his first touch, scoring the opening goal of the game. What does he have to do to get a start, man?
You're right, but I think he's the type of player that I think Mikel Arteta will lean to off the bench because his numbers are pretty impressive when he's off the bench. I think he reminds me of sort of Diego Jota, the way he plays, where Tim nailed it. And when you're a professional footballer, there's lots of attributes you might be able to have in skill and technique and character, etc., etc. But the word Tim used there was effect. And you have to affect a football match. And Trossard's got this ability, whether he's starting games, whether he's coming off the bench, to never be sort of phased. He's a very good finisher. He's calm. He obviously had a point to prove, which might help him. Might be his character when he starts games. Not sure what the numbers are in terms of when he starts to when he comes off the bench. But when he comes off the bench, he scores big goals. And what a weapon to have if you're Mikel Arteta and you see Bukayo Saka, or you see Martinelli, or you see Kai Havertz not performing. You can bring this guy on and you know he's going to affect the match. Yeah,
Tim, just from a manager's point of view, would you start him? Would you give him a run in the team?
Well, 6 of his 13 goals he scored have come when he's come off the bench of his 14 goals. So what he does is he affects the game, but he comes on with a correct attitude. You always worry about players when you leave them out because he feels that he should be starting because the way he does come in impacts. He feels he should be starting, but he comes with a correct attitude, and that's all you can ask as a manager. But what he's got to be wary of is the manager thinks he's too good a pro. He's too good an impact player.
Too easy to
and
put on the bench.
Martinelli might not be as effective if he brings him off the bench. All he can do, Jules, is do what he's doing. Come in there, impact the game, be the hero at the end of it. You saw with the celebration there, he was standing there just to say, that's what I do.
Do you mean like too easy to put on the bench?
Too easy.
Because he won't.
Too easy. But I'm not saying he should go in there screaming and shouting, but I'm sure he's got a voice. He's an experienced international player. He needs to have a chat with Mikel and just say, look, Gaffer, I deserve it now. I'm sure in their next game, next weekend, he starts.
See, in our day, it would have been a knock on the door. Gaffer, start me. And the
Maybe
manager
he
says
did
no.
it with his celebration because he was pretty muted, right? Maybe that's what he was.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, he's annoyed. He's obviously annoyed. I think he showed it in the correct way there because what he's saying is that this is what I do. I come and I do continually try and affect the football match. And that's exactly what he does. And the crowd are crying out for him as well. Martinelli, I think it's horses for courses with Mikel with that left side. I think he's very effective. He's got a great pace down the outside. He stays wide and he runs right down the outside and he can affect it. We know he can score goals. Both of them are very good players. But for me, I prefer the way Trossard plays that position and comes into them little pockets and he can assist from there as well. His assist record is fantastic as well.
A goal rush game. That.
It was.
Absolutely.
Yesterday.
Sammy Schmadix started the goal rush.
Yeah.
Ipswich with their first Premier League goal. Very, very exciting.
And what an impressive start. I mean, lesson to Kieran McKenna, don't give it the big one when you score against Man City in the first couple of minutes because it can bite you. But Hutchinson does well here down the right-hand side. He sort of drives, gets into a bit of space, then Schmadix runs from deep. They're trying to play him offside, but you can't because there's no pressure on the ball. And then agonisingly, I think all the Ipswich fans in the away end were desperate to try and get that ball over the line. That's that high line from City. They had all of the ball. I mean, no surprise they had a high line because the percentage stats were off the charts early on. And then Kieran McKenna sees his team go 1-0 up. But then a whirlwind happened in about, I don't know, 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes. And all of a sudden they're 3-1 behind. And it was a demolition in the end. City were incredibly good. I mean, I've seen enough in one game of Savinho that tells me the fans are going to love him. Then you got Jeremy Doku, De Bruyne looked lean, he looked sharp, and Haaland got his hat-trick. So much to like.
Yeah, you're talking about a goal whirlwind after that. It did start with a penalty, and so to break this down for us, because there were 2 penalty appeals here, we are bringing in the experts.
Ooh.
So, Chris Foy, former Premier League referee and our resident expert here on the Weekend Wrap. Chris, so great to have you in our company tonight to explain to us. There were 2 penalty appeals, one for either side, one given, one not. Similar, you have to break it down for us and explain why. Important as well to note that neither were given on the field.
Yeah, you're absolutely correct, Jules. I mean, the first one, Silvinho's in the penalty area, and quite clearly there's a challenge from behind by Davis. You'll see it now. It's right on the junction of the penalty area. Moves forward, sliding challenge, reckless challenge, doesn't get the ball. Is it inside the penalty area? That's the decision. Yes, it is. I think that's a foul. The referee doesn't give a penalty. Quite clearly points to the corner flag for a corner, and I think there was a really good intervention by the VAR David Coote, and obviously when he went to the monitor and looked at it, a penalty was awarded, and it was the right decision. So
then, why was the Ipswich one not awarded, Chris?
I think there's a difference between the two. I think this is 2 players. I think it's hip on hip. They bump into each other in the penalty area. I think if a penalty's given, it certainly wouldn't be overturned. And what we're talking about here is ref's call. Yes, there's contact. Does the player go to ground easily? As I said, if it's given, it would stay. But the referee didn't think it was a penalty, and we've got this high bar for intervention, and the VAR didn't intervene. So the first one for me is the correct decision. The second one, I wouldn't disagree with that either, but I'm pretty sure Don will disagree.
I think they both will. There's a lot of shaking of heads here.
I think you've read my mind, Chris, because if you're given the first one, I think when you look at the tackle by Savinho on the second one and you say hip on hip, it is. But in my opinion, it's a definite foul. So I wonder why the VAR team didn't ask the referee to go and look at that at the monitor.
I think because it's hip on hip, and there is slight contact and he goes to ground easily. We talk about this high bar for intervention on the first one, and that's a clear foul. And I was surprised the referee didn't spot it at the time, but we got to the right outcome. With the second one, I think there is a difference. I I think you stay with it. Referee's call. It's not one that I think jumps out at me, and you know, people say it's a clear penalty. I think there's just that coming together. I just don't see it. But you've probably got a different view to me.
Okay,
if you're going to get anything, when you go to the Etihad, if you're going to get anything, you're a newly promoted side, you know you're going to be up against it anyway. You need to get every decision going your way, and unfortunately, they didn't get either.
So I said, do you want to say anything? You said no. So let me just say thank you to Chris, because we're going to hear from him in just a little bit. Thank you so much, Chris. Did you agree or not?
No, it was a penalty. Both of them are penalties, in my opinion. But I think they could have easily gone the other way. Like I say, you need everything to go your way. They could have ruled out the Man City one. They could have given that one just on half-time. Could have been a different game. Don's absolutely right. They got outplayed. It's the true reality of the Premier League, and that is really at the top end of it. You know, we're talking about the best team in the world of football in Man City, and they put them to the sword, unfortunately.
So the penalty that was given is going then to Erling Haaland. He puts it away, and that's for 1-1. And then it starts a crazy spell of like 3 minutes and 11 seconds in which City score and take the lead and just put this game beyond it.
Well, this is where, when you come up from the Championship, this is where you need to be switched on. I mean, a brilliant ball from De Bruyne, and this still needs finishing from Erling Haaland. Takes it around the goalkeeper. But what you should do